Before we begin this week, I just want to thank all of you that shared in the icebreaker last week. I found them very interesting. A lot of them were very personal, and I appreciate you sharing with the class as well as with me. I also want to comment on the discussion question from the week before on customer service and pricing. A lot of you gave some excellent examples where you had run into issues with the price being incorrect. Some of you gave excellent examples of how it was handled well through the store, the manager, and some of you gave examples of how it should never be handled through the sales associate and or the manager. Again, it was an excellent discussion, and I loved reading all of the postings. And in sharing this, you realize that you're not the only one that has ever experienced poor customer service. And it also gives you hope in those situations where people posted something good, that people do understand what customer service should be, and they do handle problems when brought to their attention and take care of them the way they should. So I appreciate the discussions. The last couple weeks have been really good, and I've enjoyed reading everything in them. This week, we're going to talk about the critical elements of a call center. This is not something that is in your book. I have posted 3 videos out there this week for you to watch, as well as 3 articles to read on this topic. But it is definitely something we need to cover, even though the book seems to concentrate more on a retail environment. Customer service in a call center is extremely important, and of course is done without having the ability to see the person on the other end or have them see you. So it does take a certain skill set to work in a call center. We're going into week 6, and your quiz this week is going to be strictly on the critical elements of a call center, on what I cover and the videos and the reading. I did put in the module to read chapter 5 because it wouldn't hurt to get a head start on that. That is getting the job, and it talks about resume writing, cover letters, thank you notes, do's and don'ts in a resume, interview questions, how to interview, things to start thinking about. As we go into week 7, we're going to be working on the final exam part of the class, which is creating a cover letter, creating a resume, and doing a mock interview. I will be putting more details out on this during the week next week, but chapter 5 starts to get you thinking. Many of you already have resumes, so it should be a little easier for you to rewrite the one for the class. You're going to be given a specific job that you're applying for, and you're going to be writing your cover letter and your resume toward that job, and you're also going to be interviewing for that particular job. So those of you that have resumes, it's a good time to update your resume, but you also have to change parts of your resume and your cover letter to match what we're looking for in the particular job description that you're being given. I will be giving you a real job that's posted out online that they are looking for help, so this is not something that I make up, but something as it shows posted online, and that's what you're going to work toward. A couple reminders. When we started the class, there were a list of requirements for software required. Skype was one of them. You need to make sure that you have Skype loaded on your computer or on your phone, because the mock interviews will be done through Skype. So make sure that you don't wait till the last minute, and that this is taken care of and you've tested it and it works prior to the last week of class. We will be doing mock interviews the last week of class, which would be the week of finals, which basically is March 6th through March 10th. It's the week before spring break. Again, I will post more information regarding this next week as we go through the week. but I wanted you to be aware of it. Some of you are currently working in call centers, some of you have worked in call centers, and some of you have never worked in a call center. As you can see by the picture, usually a call center is a location with normally a large number of phone banks coming into that location with service representatives that are either answering those calls or making calls. You can have either an inbound call center, which means calls are always coming in. This would be, for instance, if you were a troubleshooting center for maybe Dish Network, most of your calls are going to come in from customers that are experiencing problems with their dish, but you're not actually placing calls. Once in a blue moon, but that's not your job. Your job is more to answer the trouble calls coming in. You can be an outgoing call center, which is a call center that really calls either existing customers or new customers, and normally is following up on new service or trying to sell additional products or services. Or you could be a call center that has both. When I managed a call center years ago, I had 75 people within my call center and 3 different supervisors. I was in telecommunications, so my call center dealt directly with voicemail services. One part of the call center did what they call MAC activity, moves, adds, and changes for voicemail services to our customers. And the other part of the call center did troubleshooting. And then within that, there was a tier level 2 and a tier level 3 in the troubleshooting call center, depending on what the problem was and if something needed to get escalated. So call centers can be huge, very huge. We have quite a few here in San Antonio. We have nationwide right down 151 here that has a huge call center. We have a new customer that's building not too far from the college here off of 151. That's a financial customer, and they're also going to have a very huge call center when they get done building, and we'll be looking for all kinds of call center representatives. Microsoft has a huge call center in this area. USAA has a huge call center that they use for banking, and many of your financial institutions do have call centers, some larger than others. So we do happen to have quite a few call centers for various industry partners located here in the San Antonio area, but you will find them all over as well. So let's take a look at basically what happens in a call center. Okay, there are 5 elements of a call center. There could be more depending on the particular call center that you end up working for, but normally there are always 5 that are covered in any kind of a call center situation. Training. Even though you may have worked in a call center previously and you get hired into another industry partner's call center, you will more than likely go through what they call their in-house training. It can be very intensive training. It can even be boot camp type training, which would mean they would try to get you up and running within a week of hardcore training. In many cases, depending on how much they value their customer, that training can go anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. And it's usually consistent of in-classroom training and mock examples and role plays of customer calls. And then in many cases, you work with a trained customer service rep taking calls for a period of time with that person there as well, more of a hands-on part of the training. But it can go anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, and it can be very intensive. We actually worked with USAA when I was a corporate liaison here at the college, and they have a pretty intensive training that they put their representatives through once they get hired. Their actual hiring process is pretty intensive. They do panel interviews, they do testing before you even get to panel interviews. It's a pretty intensive process to even get into the door to actually go through their own training and then be put out on the floor. But they are avid in their belief in serving their customers and giving quality customer service. They're also a big company that believes on promoting from within. So many of these folks that started in the call center have gone up the chain, not only on the call center end of the company, but also into other departments or other areas within USAA, as well as into leadership roles, which is good. I'm an avid believer, if you're going to spend the time and money training your people, that you make opportunities available for them within your company once they're qualified, that they can apply for an interview for. There's usually some type of an internal certification process, meaning once you go through the training and you're all done, it could be a testing certification, it could be a mock call certification. We used to do both. We would test them on what was covered in class. We would test them on using the system that was used to answer calls. So in other words, working on the computer and knowing what screens to go to and how to look things up. And we would also give them a mock customer call that we would listen to as they worked their way through the issue that the customer had calling in. Once they were able to pass all three of those, they became certified, and then they were put out on the floor. In most cases, there's also new employee training that is not as specific to the call center as it is to just knowing about the industry and the company that you're starting to work for and work within. You will see service reps go by a number of different names, CSRs, customer service representatives, or customer service associates. Some companies just call their people associates. It just depends on the company. But basically, these are the folks that are front line working with the customer, either calling customers or taking calls from customers for troubleshooting, for banking issues, for new service, for new products. Even when you order something online, sometimes if you decide that you want to call to follow up on something, you may be calling a call center to follow up on an order that you had placed through online. But these are the people that deal firsthand with the customer calls coming in. So the first element would be some type of training. It is normally very industry specific. There are certain things that are done similar in all industries, but if you're working in a financial institution, it's going to be a little bit different than it's going to be if you're handling orders for a big name magazine ordering retail outlet. So certain things are done the same with customer service, but in terms of the script or how you work through the customer problem and the policies and procedures are going to be very specific to that industry. Scheduling is another big element and a very important element of a call center. In many of the big call center environments, they actually have people that this is their job. They are schedulers, period. That is what they do, is they look at how they're going to schedule all of the customer service reps. And if it's a real big place, they usually schedule out anywhere from a month to 3 months ahead of time so that people know when their days off are and when you're going to work. It could be a call center that runs 24 hours, so you could have different shifts. Scheduling is not an easy job because there's a lot of things that you have to take into account when you're scheduling. So we're going to make a couple assumptions here. We're going to assume we're working with 13,000 customer service reps in this particular call center. And when you look at scheduling, you're going to look at daily, which is going to be looking at the projected number of calls you think you're going to take per day, how many representatives you're going to have on a particular day or a particular shift, minus those that may be on vacation, and taking into account those that may call in sick. The company operating hours, and this is where shift becomes very important. If you just have a call center that's open Monday through Friday during normal working hours, maybe 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, it's a lot easier than if you're a 24/7 shop and you're needing to schedule 3 different shifts, because each of those shifts are going to be very different. The projected number of calls are going to be different, whether it's a day shift, a mid shift, or a midnight shift, as well as the types of representatives in those groups will be very different in the type of business that's enacted during those time frames. You also have to take into account required breaks and lunch times, any type of unit or group meetings that are normally scheduled. And in call centers, they do meetings and unit meetings and group meetings to keep their people informed of what is going on, to train, to assist with maybe new products or services that are coming out, so that the call center people are aware of these products and services and can talk intelligently to the customer about them. Scheduling also accounts for weekly. Okay, so that's just the daily stuff that you're looking at. Then you also need to look at, if it's a very good call center, they'll have coaching times and training times set aside, not only for their new hires, but for their existing call center representatives as well. So you need to account for that, because when someone's in a coaching time or a training time, they're not logged into the screen or the ACD, so they're not taking calls. So you're working with one less representative, when your calls are coming in, which can definitely affect your customer service time if you do not take that into account. Scheduling also accounts for monthly employee meeting times, sometimes held by management, whether it be your departmental management. Sometimes it could be upper management within the company. The CEO decides they want to do a town hall, so everybody is scheduled that day from 9 to 10 into a town hall meeting. Or you work with what we call a very limited amount of representatives taking calls during that time. So all of this has to be taken into consideration when you're scheduling, because of course the goal is really to make sure that your customers, when they call, are not sitting on hold, that they get a service rep as soon as possible to placing that call. And there are also, in many locations, quality meetings that are held. I know in call centers there are a lot of goals and objectives for service time, for repair time, for installation without mistakes. These things are recorded, and there are a lot of statistics that are reviewed with the staff weekly so that they know where they stand. There's a lot of contests that go on to keep people motivated and to keep that quality and that consistency in place. Monitoring and quality assurance is another element. Most of your service reps are logged into what's called an ACD, and we're going to talk about that a little more as we go forward. But when they're answering calls, the call comes in, they are able to look at their screen, they're able to move around to different screens within that software on the screen, and they're able to talk to their customer while they're pulling up information on that customer. Calls can be monitored at any given time in an ACD environment by supervisors or management, and this is done to ensure that high quality standards are being met. It's certainly done in a training scenario. When you put a new representative out on the floor, you're going to want to monitor their calls for a little while just to make sure that they're not having any issues. And if they are, after the call, these are things that you can then follow up and coach the employee on. Many calls are recorded and reviewed. This is also used for performance appraisals as well. It's also used when you're dealing with a performance problem employee, because you can record calls and you can play back and you can talk to the employee about what happened on that call. But more importantly, monitoring calls is normally used for feedback to the call service representatives to help build knowledge and to also help new representatives build their confidence level on the phone. Another element is coaching. I know I had regular coaching sessions, in my case with my supervisors, and then the supervisors were to schedule regular coaching sessions with each of their call service reps. And this was done on a weekly basis. In our case, we had contractual agreements in place. If we did not repair something within a certain turnaround time frame, if we did not have installations completed within a certain turnaround time frame that was written into the contract, there were dollar penalties associated with that. So it became imperative to not miss our contracted time frames, because every time we did, we lost money. Every call center is a little different, but understand that there are contractual commitments in place, and there are goals that are put in place that are company goals, departmental goals, and in many cases, down to the individual goal for each of the representatives that are looked at and viewed and are required to be met in terms of running and providing the service that the company wants to provide to their customers. Coaching is an opportunity to learn and grow, obviously. It's a time to meet with either your supervisors or your individual employees, in case they have any questions or issues. It's a time to go over new products. If the company is rolling out a new product or service offering, you definitely want to make sure your people that are on the line with the customer understand the product and can speak to it. You can learn as much as possible about the customers and the products in a coaching focus. Use the information to identify customer needs. USAA deals with very specific customers. Understanding the customers that you deal with helps you, of course, be able to offer just the right product, service, or repair to that specific customer. It's really no different than retail in how you provide the service to your customer. It's really knowing that customer well enough and listening and communicating so that you can provide them what they need or repair a particular problem. It's just different because you can't see the customer and they can't see you. So you do not have the body language, the facial expression that normally comes into play when you're dealing with somebody face to face. Your service, however, shouldn't be any different. You should still be delivering that superior, excellent quality customer service. It just takes some different skill sets to do it. Keep in mind, this past week, hopefully you watched what was more the documentary on body language, and you can see how important it is, and it plays such a big role, particularly in the political arena. I'm sure there are things you watched you didn't realize, the hand on the back and having someone go before you is more of a power play. In politics, of course, and I mentioned this previously, they actually have people that are assigned to coach them on various body language, facial expressions, things to do, things not to do, perhaps some of their own body language that they do without thinking about is brought forward, and they're learned to change that or to become aware of it so that they can portray themselves differently. I found the documentary very, very interesting, and it speaks volumes. And if you become a people watcher and you really start learning to read body language, not just facial expression, the whole kit and caboodle, we're just an interesting sort to watch all the different things that we do and all the messages we convey without actually saying anything. So again, in the call center, you don't have this option. So you're having to read your customer and they're having to read you through some very different skills and very different senses than sight. The last element in the call center of the most important 5 is the software and the technology. If they're a big call center, in many cases they are probably using state-of-the-art technology, because it really is what you need to keep in place to be competitive and to be able to provide the quality service that you want to your customers. Every call center uses some sort of an ACD, which is an automatic call distribution system. Basically, what an ACD system does is it takes the incoming calls to a specific group of terminals or agents, depending on how the system is set up, and it distributes those calls throughout those terminals and or agents. There's multiple ways to distribute calls. You can do it at first available, so when someone hangs up the phone, a call automatically routes, because the system is smart enough to see that there is an open representative, so it'll route the call there. You can set your representatives up in a number format, and you can set the ACD up to route the calls via numbers, so it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and start over again. There's just a variety of ways to set it up. Why you want to use an ACD and why you want to pay attention to how you distribute your calls, again, is because you have this huge bank of calls coming in from customers, and your goal is to be able to handle large volumes of calls quickly. In other words, give the customers quick access to the service representatives without having them wait on hold. I mean, that is really the key. I don't want to have to sit there 20 minutes to wait for a representative to pick up and work with me. And that's usually something that is also measured in the environment. Many call centers, not all, but many call centers, especially huge ones, within their software technology, also make sure that customers can conduct business either by phone, internet, their mobile device, perhaps a video location that the industry has set up, or like in banking, you have, their call center for, let's say, Security Services Federal Credit Union could be located over on the east side, and yet they have retail locations all over the city of San Antonio. So if you call into the call center, you're probably hitting the call center bank that's located in one location, but you should be able to, as well, be able to go into a retail location and be able to do whatever business or take care of whatever business or problem you need to as well. Again, it depends on the industry and the business type, but in many cases, they make the technology available because customers use a variety of different technology these days to take care of business. So they make sure, if they're good, they make sure that their customers can conduct business with them in a variety of different ways. Let's talk about the power of one, what we're going to call the power of one. And you're going to need to know and understand this. Most call centers measure ASA in seconds, and ASA stands for the average speed of answer, which is really what we were talking about when we were talking about having calls evenly distributed through an ACD system, so that a customer call coming in gets picked up pretty quickly, and a customer isn't waiting in a hold pattern to talk to a representative. We're going to take an example. If we have 51 service representatives that are answering incoming calls, okay, the average speed of answer based on the reports that we're able to pull out of our ACD system, and it can pull a variety of different reports for you. It looks at a lot of different things to help you provide good customer service. When we have 50 representatives logged in to the ACD on their computer waiting for calls to come in, the average speed of answer is 19 seconds. So a customer basically waits 19 seconds before they get a service rep pickup. Okay? If we go down to 50 representatives, let's say a person takes off for an hour lunch. During that hour, now that we only have 50 representatives answering calls and logged into the ACD, that average speed of answer time has gone from 19 seconds to 30 seconds before the call is actually picked up and the customer can talk to somebody. And as we go through this list, you can see how it changes. If now we have 2 people out and we only have 49 people logged in, now the customer is waiting almost a minute, 50 seconds, before someone picks up. 48, they're waiting 91 seconds. At 47 people answering calls, they're waiting 236 seconds, which is not acceptable. Okay? The norm in many cases is anywhere from 16 to 19 seconds before the call is picked up by a service rep. That is considered the industry average and an acceptable average. So when you start getting into these longer answer times, you are now already affecting the quality customer service that you want to provide to your customer. Now, what we mean by the power of one is sometimes in a call center, the people working there will go, well, you know what? If I don't go in today, it's not going to be a big deal. They got 50 other people picking up calls. So, it's not really going to impact service. Or, I'm at lunch. You know what? If I'm 15 minutes late, it's not going to be a big deal because there's still enough people to answer the calls. So, I run over on my lunch, or I take longer on my break. Anytime you're out of that ACD, logged out, you are affecting that average speed of answer. So the power of one person being gone can have a dramatic effect, okay, on not only the service, but it also can have effect on the dollars. And I'm going to show that to you in the next slide. If each of the 13,000 call center reps decided to arrive a little late, leave a little early, and stretch a few breaks, maybe their breaks 10 minutes, okay, adding up to 15 minutes per day. So let's just say each one of these 13,000 representatives takes 15 minutes extra per day, whether it be because they're late a little bit, or they leave early, or they stretch a break. Okay, that's 195,000 minutes, okay, 3,250 hours, 135.4 days, 19.34 weeks. The cost to the company for those 13,000 only taking 15 minutes more a day of break, lunch, or leaving early cost the company $50,375 per day. Okay? The cost per year is astronomical. So that is the power of one. I exaggerated it so you could see it by using 13,000. And we don't think 15 minutes is much. So you come back from break 15 minutes late. That's really not a big amount of time. But if everybody chose to do that, not only is it a big amount of time and affects your customer service, it also costs the company money. That's why when you work in a call center, people are so hyper, management is so hyper about you being on time, leaving on time, coming back from break on time, coming back from lunch on time, because they schedule accordingly to be able to take the incoming calls and to be able to cover the calls so that their customer needs are being met. So there is such a thing as the power of one. One person really does have a lot of power in affecting service time and dollars within a call center environment. Before we go forward a little bit, let's talk a little bit about employees that work in a call center environment, because there's a lot of stereotypes out there, and I've actually heard some of them in class. I had someone last semester tell me that the only people that work in call centers are like college students or part-time people that are just wanting to have a job until they get their degree and they find something else. It's really not any kind of a livelihood or a permanent job. That is a fallacy, and that is not true. Do we have people that work in call center situations as a job until they are able to either complete degrees or to go on to something else? Yes. But in most cases, and I can tell you in my call center, the average age of my service representatives, male and female, the average age was anywhere between 40 and 50. Now, I had some that were as old as 60. I had some in their 30s, and I had only 2 that were in their 20s. For many of these people that worked in the call center that I managed, they had been there for many years. 10, 15, 20, some were looking at close to retirement. So it is not necessarily just a stepping stone job. Again, it depends on the company, it depends on the call center. There was a time when call center representatives did not make a decent salary. Now the big companies that use call centers realize how important these employees are to the service delivery to their customers, and many times, well, not many times, the overall salary has gone up for call center representatives, and they're paid much better than they were 10 to 15 years ago. There is growth in call centers. You can go from an entry level. Many times they have different associate levels, a level 1 associate, a level 2, a level 3. You can go from leveled associates into one of the different tier groups, like I told you. These are the groups that have a wide variety of technical expertise and experience. So when the regular call center representatives aren't able to resolve the issue, it gets sent to the level 2 or the level 3 group to try to figure out what's going on. I can tell you in a telephone situation, a technical level 3 tier group, these are guys with intense technical knowledge. They could go out and install your system and deinstall it and work on the wiring and everything else. These guys can make anywhere from $60,000 to a 6-figure income, depending on the knowledge that they have in this 3rd level tier. So these are jobs that in the big companies, they look to hire people in, keep these people, train these people, promote these people within, so that these people can climb within the company into other positions, gather other skill sets, maybe go into leadership if that is what they want to do, because it's not for everybody, so not everybody wants to go that route. But there are other routes to grow in financially and with skill sets that aren't necessarily leadership routes. So don't fool yourself into thinking that these are just jobs that, you know, people take on the road to somewhere else, because that's not always the situation. And in many of the call centers around here, in fact, I can tell you nationwide, they do not hire part-time customer service reps for that very issue. They don't want a part-timer. They want full-time people that are committed to the job, because it takes a lot of time and money to train these people. So the goal, of course, in any job is to not have high turnover. Because every time you turn someone over and have to rehire and bring somebody back into the company, it's costing you $2,000 to $3,000. So if you can hire right the first time, get them trained, and keep them within the company, you're actually saving the company money. But I wanted to make a mention of that here. These are serious jobs, and the people that do them are serious about the job and about being able to go somewhere else and move within the company and gain some other skill sets in many cases. I also want to make the point, and when you watch the videos, you'll be aware of this as well. It's not for everybody. Okay, it is just not the type of job. Even if you have excellent interpersonal skills, if you are not a person that can sit at a desk tied to a phone, it is not the job for you, because that's what you do. You have to be logged into the ACD. Okay, you have to be able to sit at the desk, be on the phone, pull up information on your computer, and work through issues with customers all day long, except when you are on break or when you are at lunch. Now, there are more and more call centers that are letting some of their call center reps work virtual, in other words, work from home. But the expectation would still be the same. You're just probably in a more relaxed environment because you're at your house, but you're still logging into an ACD. You're still being expected to take so many calls a day, to resolve so many things, or to sell so much product. So if you are not a person, in other words, if you are hyperactive and you can't sit for a good period of time at your desk, then even though you may have great interpersonal skills, you need to be out on a retail floor, or you need to be doing something face-to-face where you can move around, where you can talk, where you are not really tied more to the desk and to the phone. And, you know, a lot of people go into a call center environment because they like the starting salary. In many cases, some of these call centers will start their new representatives, the big ones, at, you know, 13 to 15, depending on experience, dollars per hour. And that looks good sometimes. But it's not easy staying logged into the ACD and talking to customers all day long. You're taking one customer after another and pulling up information worked in, unless this is something you really enjoy doing. So keep that in mind should you ever think of applying into a call center, that, you know, this is what it entails. A lot of people go in and they go, well, I didn't realize this is what the job was. Well, what did you think it was? I mean, you are answering calls, or you're out calling all day long, doing sales calls. Now again, these are jobs that are really needed in industry and really needed in certain industries for the industry to be successful with its customer, its end user. But again, it's just not for everybody. So you need to keep that in mind. And when you look at the videos, some of these are videos that are kind of selling the company to people about becoming, customer service rep, but it gets you a good feel for the kind of skill sets they look for, what the job entails. I also have an article out there that talks about, pretty much the average salary, although, what you can go up to. And I'm here to tell you that if you begin in a call center and you work your way up to management or director of a call center, if you're a director of a call center, you're probably making a six-figure income if it's a huge call center. Okay, so there is money to be made. These are not, as this one guy said to me, a throwaway job. You do it for a while and then you leave. These are serious positions, and of course the companies want serious people that are committed to being able to service their customer and do a good job. So hopefully you understand the power of one. You need to know it. Review the slide. Go back through what I talked through. But one person can have an incredible impact on the average answer time, which impacts the service to the customer, which impacts dollars to the company. And you need to know it. I'm telling you right now, you need to understand it because it will be on your quiz. Telephone techniques. One of the biggest misconceptions on the phone is that people can't see your expressions. So you don't worry about what you look like, how you feel. However, your expressions, it's certainly in how you feel. If you're feeling bad, if you're mad, if you had a fight with your significant other that morning and you come in and answer that phone, even though your customer can't see your face, it's going to be felt and heard in your tone. Okay? On the phone, tone is 87% of the delivery of the message to your customer. Words 12, body language basically 1. They hear you coughing or sneezing. Okay, they're picking up on that. Tone is everything. That's why when you go into some of the call centers, they will have a big sign in all of their call centers representatives' desks that say, when you answer the phone, smile. Because when you smile, it changes your facial expression. If you are actually cracking a smile, and your tone is going to come out different. Okay, just like if you've had a fight and you're really stewing on it, when you pick up that phone, you don't want to be there, you're mad, you really don't feel like dealing with a customer situation, the customer's going to pick that up. Okay, there's a big difference between, good morning, how are you today? What can I help you with? And, good morning, how are you doing today? What can I help you with? Who would you rather deal with? Okay, I said the exact same words, but my tone is different. Okay, tone plays a big part. And we talked about this a little earlier. Pitch, your tone, your speed. Okay, listen. Those interpersonal skills are so important. Not only do you need to be able to communicate, but you really need to listen to that customer. Sometimes you are going to get an elderly person on the phone who is confused, frustrated, upset, certainly if it's a technology problem, and maybe they don't hear well. And maybe they're shouting at you, which tends to happen. My father does this. He can't hear. So because he can't hear, he yells on the phone when he talks to you. So I have to hold the phone like a mile away from my head because he's yelling in my ear. I'm not the one that can't hear. He can't. But because he can't, he yells. Instead of assuming that customer is yelling on the other end, take a minute to listen and try to really get a picture on the customer that you're dealing with. You have, in many instances, all kinds of customer statistics in your database, whether you pull it by their phone number or their social number or however the system is set up, that will give you more and more information about your customer. Don't always assume that because a customer is screaming, okay, that they're mad at you. They may not be able to hear. Don't assume that because a customer is speaking very slowly that they're idiots, okay? But you do need to take into account the customer that you're dealing with and try to make sure that your tone and what you're trying to convey come across as helpful and, come across as you're smiling and you're glad they're there and you want to service them. It becomes very, very important on the phone. It's always important, but even more so when someone cannot really see your face. And let's face it, some of you even talked about this, even in the retail industry. By the end of the day, you're tired, you want to go home, you've had it, and someone walks in 10 minutes before you close and needs help. Okay? You can't convey all of that to that customer, and they can see your body language. So they can see you kind of slouching over at the counter or maybe yawning or whatever. I mean, you have to perk yourself up, and you have to, even though you would rather they had not come in 10 minutes before closing, you have to go over and see what you can do to help that customer. Same thing applies on the phone. Teamwork is vital in a call center. It's vital in most organizations that you will work for, although there are jobs out there where you're an individual performer and you're not part of a team. But in most cases, in most companies, at some point in time, you're going to have to work on a team or be part of a team, but it's even more important when you're in a call center environment because, as I said earlier, you have different levels, and when you can't help someone, you need to be able to, send that person to someone that can, update that person you're sending to them to on what the situation is and where you're at. Or it may be a situation that has to escalate to management. You want to be able to communicate accurately to management what's going on before you transfer the call. And that's another thing. You never blind transfer or cold transfer a call in a call center. You ask the customer to hang on. You let them know that you're going to be transferring them, to your level 2 service center or whatever the case may be. You call a person in that group. Susie answers. You let Susie know what is going on. Get Susie up to date. And then you bring the customer in and say, I have Susie from our level 2 technical center on the phone, and she's going to be assisting you going forward. And then you get off. The same thing would come into play if you needed to bring management in. Perhaps you have a customer that just is not understanding what you're trying to tell them. Perhaps you get an irate customer that is so irate that you are unable to calm this customer down. Again, this is part of the training, and you'll know when you are to escalate to management or when you are to turn a customer over to a different tier level of support. Based on that, it becomes really important that you understand you are part of the team and you need to develop and maintain those relationships with your team. Be clear on your expectations. Make sure you're clear on what the customer is looking for when you hand something off. Recognize the importance of maintaining these relationships because it could be reciprocal. You might need help down the road, and this person could help you. Understand that people communicate in very different styles, and certainly in a call center, a big call center like 13,000, you have 13,000 different personalities, And even though everybody's trained to do things similarly, everyone else has a different communication style. And you're going to have to learn to understand your team's communication styles and theirs, yours, and work with those different styles. So you really need to keep that in mind. You don't have to love the person. You don't have to be their best friend and go out partying with them afterwards, but you do know how. You have to know how to work as a team, and you have to know how to come across to the end customer as a team. Whether, this is someone that you would never in a million years be friends with outside of work. You do need to know how to team to get the job done. So it becomes very important. Let's talk about some helpful phrases when you're talking on the phone. These are just a few things that start off with, I care, I will, I can, I'd like to understand, help me to understand, how are things with you, let's define the problem. This is what I heard you say. Remember, that's that repeat then reply, particularly when they're talking about a problem scenario. Okay, let them be quiet, listen, let them explain, and then you're going to do, this is what I heard you say. So when you pick up your phone, it's not doing blah, 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 whatever. But repeat back what you thought you heard them say. So if you misunderstood or they, for whatever reason, didn't communicate it properly, it gives them an opportunity to correct it. How can I help you? Can I do anything to help? What else can I do to help? What are your expectations? You're always going to want to thank the customer. Silence with concern. Now that sounds funny because you're being silent, but a customer can tell when you're basically active listening. And at some point you're silent and you're listening. At other points you may go, yes, I understand, and they continue on. But they can tell, at least I can tell, when somebody's really listening to me and when someone's just like, yeah, filing their nails in the background and couldn't care less about what I'm saying. So all of these things will help with customers. Least helpful phrases, and certainly things that can get a customer riled, especially if it's a frustrated customer that may have been tossed around from one rep to another, which should never happen, but as we all know, it does. I'll try. They don't particularly want to hear that you will try. They want you to help them do something. Okay? You never want to tell a customer they shouldn't feel that way. Why? Because they're entitled to feel how they feel. Okay? You also don't want to tell them that's not important. It may be minuscule to you, but doggone it, it's important to that customer. That's why they're calling. And it may be something that to you wouldn't have wasted time on a call, but to that customer, it's creating them a lot of grief. You also don't want to say, I know exactly how you feel, because really, you're not in their shoes, and you don't know exactly how they feel. You also don't want to say things like, I know what you are going to say. These are the kind of things that start to put a customer off, and if they're already frustrated, are going to start to get them riled. This is what you need to do. There's a better way to be able to get the customer to work with you besides saying this is what you need to do. They're calling you because they want you to help them. Any phrase that contains words like always, never, all the time, everyone, or permanently can have negative connotations depending on what you say and how it comes across. Silence without concern or indifference, as I mentioned, not actively listening to the customer. They can tell. I can tell when I'm going on. In fact, there's sometimes I've just said, are you there? Are you listening? And the person will go, I'm there. And I'm like, well, can you repeat back what I just told you? Because I didn't feel that they were really listening to what I had to say. So all of these things can make what may be a frustrating situation escalate or worse. Sometimes you just need to think about phrasing things a little differently. You need to think on your feet, obviously, when you're on the phone with a customer. If you were going to say, I'll have to, try instead, I'll be glad to. It comes across a little differently than I'll have to. Okay? Instead of I'll try, I will. I'd hate to, I want to. If you notice, most of the things on the left-hand side of the screen here come across, even if you don't mean them to, but because of the word choice, they come across negative. You know, they're not as positive. I can't. I haven't yet. And I can try to look at what we can do to blah, blah, blah. If you can, how about, when will you be able to get a hold of so we can work through this issue? This is a terrible problem. And the customer already knows that. It's why they're calling you. This is a challenging opportunity, but you know, I think if we get our Tier 2 level folks on board with us, we may be able to figure this out for you. That's impossible. That would be like the wrong thing to say to a very frustrated, irate person. That can be done. However, in order to do that, we're going to have to change blah, blah, blah. So sometimes you just need to think on your feet and think about phrasing something a little differently in order to change the outcome of that call. Remember, we talked about in some of the discussion questions and in the past that a lot of it is patience, empathy. A big part of it is having very key interpersonal skills. You being able to communicate accurately, your tone, most importantly, listening, because we are so bad at doing that. And certainly, if someone's yelling at us, we tend to want to get defensive, and you need to not get defensive. It's not about you. And I say that very easily. I know it's not easy. It's a hard thing to do. But these are people that, in many cases, are trained and work through different scenarios so that you can remain calm, cool, and collected, because somebody needs to in order to remedy the situation or work through the issue at hand. Again, I hope you enjoy the 3 videos. Gives you a little bit of an idea about what happens in the call centers, the type of skill sets they look for in their call center folks. The articles, again, talk about some of the skill sets that are looked for, and one in particular talks about the average salary range, and then the low to the high end if you stay within a call center environment as a call center rep. Hopefully you'll take a look at all of that. Your quiz, again, will be on call centers and will include this information that I presented today, as well as the information in the videos and the reading. So have a good week, and be on the lookout, because I'll be posting some different things about the final, and also probably be recording some other things to give you more information on the final exam.